Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Frontenac County Council's meeting of Wednesday, February the 19th. I'd like to begin with a call to order, and then we're going to read the land acknowledgement. We begin this gathering by acknowledging and celebrating these traditional lands as a gathering place Are we good to go? Okay. Sorry about that. We begin this gathering by acknowledging and celebrating these traditional lands as a gathering place of the First Peoples and their ancestors who were entrusted to care for Mother Earth since time immemorial. We do so respecting both the land and the Indigenous people who continue to walk with us through this world. Today, the county is committed to working with Indigenous peoples and all residents to pursue a united path of reconciliation. We have no closed session. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof? Seeing none. Adoption of the minutes.
Moved by Councillor Smith, seconded by Councillor Greenwood Spears. Resolved that the minutes of the regular council meeting held January 15th, 2025 be adopted.
Are there any comments? All in favor? Carried. We have no delegations and no presentations. We do have a proclamation.
Moved by Councillor Fowler and seconded by Councillor Leonard, and through you, Warden Lichty, I'll just read the resolve clause. Now therefore be it resolved that the Council of the County of Frontenac hereby proclaims the month of February as Therapeutic Recreation Month with the theme of Unlocking Potential to showcase the many roles that therapeutic recreation play in a patient's healthcare journey.
Are there any comments? In favor of the resolution? Carried. So we move into the committee of the whole.
Moved by Deputy Warden Saunders, seconded by Councillor Gowdy, that council adjourn and meet as committee of the whole council with the Deputy Warden in the chair.
In favor? Carried.
Good morning, everyone. We're going to proceed with the rest of the agenda, and that begins with briefings by our CEO, Mr. Kevin Farrell. Mr. Farrell.
Perfect. So good morning, Warden, Deputy Warden, and Council. As always, I'll take you through the CIO update for February 2025. I will touch on the main points, but happy to answer any questions. So first off, just to highlight a few items from my February schedule. So on February 3rd, we had a joint meeting of the Frontenac CAOs and treasurers. The group met in Sharbot Lake and had good discussions about common interests and challenges, and so that meeting went well. On February 5th, we held our second meeting of the Governance Review Committee. So thank you again to Jeanette for providing a detailed overview as the committee discussed the sale and disposition of land, land use, and delegated authority. These items are posted on our Engage Frontenac website and will eventually come before County Council. On February 6th, the Frontenac Municipal Services Corporation held their annual general meeting. I'm happy to share that Mayor Smith was reappointed president and Warden Lichty was reappointed vice president of the corporation. The board had a busy agenda, which included the adoption of a new logo and branding strategy, as well as a 2025 work plan. The Technical Support Committee for the FMSC meets again February 27th. In terms of an HR update, we've had 97 postings as of February 7th, so that's quite a bit. We've been doing a lot of backfill, so we have a new EA. We've been assisting with the CEO recruitment for the corporation, assistance with communications and admin coordinator for the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus as well. We've now posted for our summer students and interns. Those postings are live. Paramedic recruitment is still underway, and interviews are looking to be held in March. And we have ongoing recruitment, as always, at Fairmount Home as we prepare for the spring and summer. In terms of labor relations for QP 2290, we have a scheduled conciliation February 25th. We'll be negotiating the ESA with the OPSU group March 13th. And the slide says no dates booked yet for bargaining at this point, but we're looking at dates in April. I think we're looking to secure some dates in early April. And then QP 109, which is the ferry group, the Marine Services, we're just doing some prep work and research and looking for dates with that group as well. Under miscellaneous, we continue to work on our Verico scheduling software. Our Star Garden succession management is now live. We've completed 360 feedback. It's all complete. And I can't see behind those other items, but we continue to do policy updates and preparation for an annual service recognition event, which will happen in the fall. So that'll be a bit of a change here. We are trying to do a combined recognition across our organization to recognize all the great work that staff do. So that'll be, I think, taking place in September. And I might just get you to, there we go. So on February 7th, Fairmount hosted a BPSO information session, which is the best practice spotlight organization. Thanks, Susan. With displays and committee members providing updates on the home's progress towards this important designation. It was a great event promoting the amazing work of our Fairmount staff, and thank you to Councillor Greenwood Spears for attending and showing your support. A few updates from Frontenac Paramedics. So Chief Gowdy continues to track offload delays, and thankfully we are seeing an improvement following some significant spikes over the holidays. Ministry of Health has also provided notice that we will be participating in a service review in April. So this includes base, vehicle, and equipment inspections. They may also be present at the hospital to observe care being provided, and our paramedics will be sure to have their MOH IDs ready. Perfect. Thanks, Amy. A big congratulations to newly promoted ACPs, Kevin McConnell and Mitch Wallace. It's a lot of hard work and dedication getting to the point of independent practice as a advanced care paramedic. So big congratulations to them. And also a big congratulations to Andrea and Tanya on receiving a save pin from a call that occurred on January 2nd. In terms of measurable digital engagements for January, they are up 20% from December, but slightly down from the same period last year. Frontenac Maps is doing very well these days, which can be attributed to the launch of our updated mapping platform. There was a good showing on LinkedIn for an item related to the January 23rd Communal Services meeting at Nuterra in Brockville. The top performing items were a Frontenac Paramedics recruitment video that earned good audiences and feedback across the province, and items related to the aforementioned paramedics, Mitch and Kevin, who earned their ACP credentials. But by far, the top performing items in January related to a public service information campaign around the 911 Medical Priority Dispatch System, which we know as MPDS. Frontenac Paramedics facilitated a collaborative effort featuring stakeholders from LNA, Leeds and Grenville, Lanark and Hastings Quinte Paramedic Services, as well as the Kingston Central Ambulance Communications Center and Kingston Health Sciences Center. Staff coordinated and produced custom material and video for each stakeholder that were featured widely in mainstream media and on social media channels across southeastern Ontario. So a big shout out excuse me, to our communications officer, Matt Mills, for his efforts on this program. Planning applications are at an expected level for the winter. The total number of applications for the three townships in 2024 was 94 applications, which is actually down from 108 in 2023. and approximately 40% of these were consents processed under delegated authority. Just a reminder from our economic development team that proudly made in Frontenac labels, tags, and shelf stickers continue to be available for businesses to use on their products. There's no charge for these items, and businesses can reach out to the ECDev team to order these for their products. Snowmobile trails in Frontenac County, including the KMP Trail, the Cataraqui Trail, and Tay-Havelock Trail, are groomed and open for winter activities. Local businesses are excited to welcome winter trail traffic from snowmobiles to cross-country skiers and fat bikes. Trail use has already exceeded 2024's entire winter season. In 2023, over the course of 6 weeks, over 2,500 snowmobiles were counted, and in 2022, that number was almost 3,300. A quick look at fourth quarter comparison numbers for the Howe Islander County Ferry. The numbers show vehicle numbers are down, but trips and passengers are actually up for the same time frame in 2023. The next slide shows the percentages from the previous slide, and to highlight the biggest change, the number of vehicles left behind was down by 27%, which is a good news story. And I want to take this opportunity to extend a warm welcome to Amy Freeburn, who joined the team yesterday as our new executive assistant. Council, we got the opportunity to get to know and interact with Amy over the coming months, and I know you've met her early this morning. And finally, I don't have a slide for this, but on behalf of the board of the Frontenac Municipal Services Corporation, I wanted to officially announce that Justin Bromberg has been named the new CEO of the FMSC. Justin will take on this leadership role starting on March 17th, and we are all looking forward to working with him to move various initiatives forward. So we'll be working on a more formal announcement and post leading up to the start date, but I wanted to announce that here for County Council. So with that, thank you, Warden and Council, Deputy Warden, and I'll take any questions at this point.
So I just got a nod from our clerk, which means I've usually done something wrong. That's it.
I can identify with that.
Councillor Smith.
I just want to make one comment, and you didn't touch on it because there was so much, but I saw a video on LinkedIn about the medical services and the work that the committee is doing. So thanks to Deb and whoever else is participating. It was excellent, and I did share it. So if anybody sees it, please share it. It was talking about the fact that we need more docs and we need to do something in Frontenac to help our existing docs as they reach closer to retirement, and what we're going to do with all those patients and how we can help. So thank you very much for the work you're doing, and I look forward to what happens in 2025. We've got to find a way.
Other questions for Mr. Farrell? Comments? Seeing none, what I'd like to do, I guess, Amy, on behalf of council, I'd like to welcome you. Amy referred to this as the hot seat. She's sitting over there in the corner. We're trying to make her job as difficult as possible. So Amy, welcome. Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is another briefing by our warden, Jerry Litke. Warden.
Now, this is the hot seat.
I have never been up here before. You almost seem like you're looking down. You know. Anyway, first of all, back in November, this council elected me as the warden for 2025 to represent us to the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus. So I thought I would just start with a 1-minute introduction about the EOWC and then go into the whole issue around tariffs and so on. EOWC is a nonprofit organization representing 13 municipalities or 13 large counties and so on. It's 103 individual municipalities and 800,000 plus people. So, you know, there's one in southwestern Ontario or western Ontario, and there's one in the north, similar, but Eastern Ontario, this has really got it together. And you meet some really interesting people. We go from Northumberland, the Kawarthas, right up to the Quebec border without Ottawa and in Kingston. And you know, the information you get when you're here, you see this picture. When you're there, you see this picture. And it really helps tie things together. So the first thing I learned is that the current government at Ontario, which is Doug Ford's government, is promoting something called Fortress AMCAN, which is basically a tying or a partnership with the Americans about energy and cross-border trade and so on, and trying to keep it within North America. Now, how the Trump organization or the Trump government changes things, we'll have to wait and see. But it's really an interesting position paper, so there you go. The EOWC looks at essentially 4 priorities: infrastructure, healthcare, housing, and improving relations with all tiers of government. And it kind of falls into where we're going right now. So the EOWC is recommending to the provincial government, and when we get a chance, the federal government, we want to ensure municipalities are part of the coordinated approach and leverage local expertise and relationships, i.e. Buy Canadian. We want to invest in infrastructure and housing to stimulate Canada's economy. I was at a Chamber of Commerce meeting in Madoc Township yesterday with a number of municipalities. Nobody's building housing. It's all private sector. And if your attainable housing is at 80%, you're looking at $800,000 houses. People can't afford those. Eliminate trade and legislative barriers to ensure municipalities can buy local. Remove impediments to ensure municipalities can give preference to Canadian companies in capital projects for other supplies. So you just can't go out as a local government or any government, even the government of Ontario, and say, if you're not Canadian, you can't bid on the job. Tried that 20 years ago. We ended up in court and Ontario lost. So everybody, if they're good enough to bid on the job, they meet the qualifications, then you have to accept their bid and give it equal treatment. Are there ways around it? I'd be looking for them, but we need the Ontario government to see what they can do to eliminate some of this. So for the infrastructure, we're looking to increase funding from the province. We've offered up land banks. Some of them are ready to go. Some of them are not. Some of them will be shortly. At Roma, we did a delegation to the NDP, and they asked that question, how ready were they? And that's where it ended. The Liberals said, why don't you just sell it off and let the developers build the houses? And I wasn't at the Conservative one, so I don't know what they said. But I was at the delegation where we talked to Minister Surma about this, and she listened, and we'll leave it at that. We want to be able to provide predictable investments. So when we do our budgets, we know how much money's coming in. We're not looking, saying, will that money be there? It's $100,000. If you're sitting with a $50 million budget, that isn't much. When you're sitting with our budgets, it's a lot. So we're looking for predictable funding and predictable investments. And we want to encourage a partnership between us and the province. And then we want the Municipal Service Corporation to be able to do its thing. It's the government of Ontario has said they buy into this. They think it's good. We're still working on reducing the red tape. Maybe we seem to have housing on the side, maybe, but we don't have Ministry of Environment yet. So essentially, that's kind of it. Healthcare, you listen to the platforms of the various parties with the election going on right now, the election campaigns, and everybody's promising everything. When you're not in power, you can promise the world, and when you are in power, you have to look at what you've done. And everybody's promising that we're going to have full doctor complement by the end of 2029. That's wonderful. Let's hope they can do it, because people depend on it. So, are there any questions?
So are there any questions for the warden? Comments? I would have one more if you want. I've heard news reports about various municipalities trying to pass bylaws to restrict purchasing to just Canadian or local contractors? Has that come up or is there anything that
Well,
could happen there?
that's the idea. The EOWC is lobbying the province of Ontario to take a look at that and see what can be done so that we can, get around that and hire Canadian only.
Councillor Greenwood Spears?
I believe it's under NAFTA that we're sort of cut, so it's actually a federal piece that'll be challenged. At this point in time, the federal government and the Ontario government are challenging the US breaking the NAFTA. So if it goes that way and we end up with a broken NAFTA and that, then all bets are off.
I mean, it was like, so I've got a couple of years on some of you. And I remember when, if you were not an Ontario contractor or an Ontario supplier, you were tacked on, you had a 10% surcharge tacked onto your bid and so on. And that was the Ontario government doing it. I don't know whether it was NAFTA or not, but that ended up in court and we lost that. So that's where we are today. So you can't do that yet, but we're lobbying to see if there are ways around it. So you can just see the arguments, and we're all going to be faced with, what do we do? Do we double taxes on American citizens? Do we want them to sell? Do we want to give American companies jobs? It's just a dog's breakfast, and we're all sort of on this roller coaster, and we're just doing it. Judy?
I think probably the most practical thing we can do is encourage all the provinces to take down the trade barriers, because the protectionists, even between workers going between Quebec and Ontario, it's very difficult. And that is not within NAFTA, so that's us. And that to me is the more practical position to go after.
Right across the country. I agree. Anything else?
Seeing no other comments or questions, thank you, Warden. Next item on the agenda is unfinished business, and there are none. The item following that is the consent reports from the Chief Administrative Officer.
Moved by Councillor Greenwood Spears, seconded by Councillor Smith, that council consent to the approval of reports A through C that are considered routine items.
So for clarity, all of these will be covered under one unless there's a councillor or a member of council who wants to pull it in. Councillor Greenwood Spears?
Yes, if we could just have a question about the Frontenac Howe Islander petition for subsidy, please.
I would look to the CEO to, who would best answer that?
Yeah, the question is, it looks like there's a $47,586 deficit still. And that despite the 20% of the fares being applied to it. So what is the mechanism for getting that cleared up? Does that come to bill to Frontenac Islands soon?
So I'm going to turn to our treasurer, Alex, to speak to that.
Yeah, so that would go to Frontenac Islands to clear it. So there's two parts in place. So Frontenac Islands also collects revenue on that ferry. We don't know what their portion is. So based on the pass/ticket sales, that might already be in the 47,000. So we've seen the last couple of years, as more debit sales are coming through on the passes, more revenues coming through on that side. So in recent years, they've generally had a surplus, whereas we've been having a deficit. How big that surplus is, yet unfortunately, we don't know. But in some way, shape, or form, yeah, that will be coming from Frontenac Islands to make up that $47,000 difference.
So when do you anticipate to be sending the bill one way or the other?
Pretty much once it's been signed off on, we will be sending that off. And again, how that's paid by Frontenac Islands will probably be some form of, hopefully, past surplus. Don't be anything additional, but if there is not enough of a surplus, then yeah, that would be, have to be raised in some other way.
Sorry, Councillor, so you had a question on number, or a comment on number C?
And one more on the paramedic equipment piece on C. And while it talks about a transfer of 425,000 that for this purchasing, I wonder what the final bill is, because to me, that's like a 10% down payment. I'm just wondering what's the final bill that we're going to have to come up with in the end.
Mr. Farrell?
Yeah, so I'm looking at the chief here, but I believe an ambulance is $250,000 or in that ballpark, but I'll turn it over to the chief if he has anything to add.
Yeah, so when we were writing this report, I think we got a quote, and I think it was $260,000 for the new ambulance. We didn't get a quote on that one. We used past purchases, and I think that was in the neighborhood of $100,000.
175.
So,
Okay, so you're saying 4 times the 260,000 and 2 times the 175? So quick math on that one?
1.41 million.
Okay, so I guess this is about a third of what we owe for the 465,000.
That's correct. So it's a 30% down payment. And again, these were planned replacements. So, but we're basically, instead of putting making the payments in 26 and 27, we're putting 30% down of the total in 25, and then we'll pay the 70% probably in 26 and 27 still when they are delivered.
So how much do we still have in our reserve then when the bill comes due?
I'll need you to defer that one because I'm still working through 24.
Sorry, Ward Lickey?
So what happens to the old ambulances when the new ones arrive? I know we have spares and so on. Do we just rotate them through, or what happens?
So usually they get decommissioned, and depending on where we're at that point, I think we might have to look at whether we extend the life of them a little to help support our spares. But I think that's something else that should come back to council at a future date.
And that will come along with the storage requirements too, right?
I beg your pardon?
That'll come along with the storage requirements too, where we house them.
Correct.
Thanks.
Councilor Fowler?
Yes, I was wondering how many spare ambulances we have, and I noticed in a report there was one that was unusable.
So right now we're essentially, sorry if I jumped the gun there. We're essentially functioning with like 3 spare ambulances currently.
Is that enough to cover our needs?
No, we struggle sometimes more than others.
So if there are no other comments or questions, I'm going to look to our clerk here for a second. So the intent now is, since none of these reports are being objected to, just comments, they'll all be passed through on one motion. Is that correct? Thank you.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. All those in favor? Pass. No. Okay, next item on the agenda is the Committee of Management of Fairmount Homes.
Moved by Councillor Gowdy, seconded by Councillor Fowler, that Committee of the Whole Council adjourn and meet as Committee of Management of Fairmount Home with the Deputy Warden in the chair.
So the first item is call the question. All in favor? Thank you. We rehearsed this ahead of time. I think so. I'll make my own notes next time. There we go. So item B, 2025-013, Fairmount Home Q4 Quarterly Update Report. This report is for information purposes only. Any questions, comments? Councillor Spears.
Thank you. I was just wondering, are we anticipating soon an improvement in the alleged critical incidents that there's been a psychiatric leave involved in, if that has worked out? Are we looking for a reduction? Because there seems to be a fair number of incidents in this last quarter.
So I can start and then I may turn it over to Susan, but yeah, we're always looking to minimize those. I think we don't always have control over the when the ministry comes and does assessments, but I'll turn it over to Susan to add any comments that she has.
Are you speaking in specific reference to the resident to resident activity?
Yeah.
One candidate has moved from the home, but I'm sure you would anticipate, the home's resident population is ever changing. We have new residents almost on a weekly basis, so the circumstances can change, so I can't guarantee. Certainly, we are doing our absolute best we can within the home staffing to address any issues.
Okay, and since we are working on the best practice spotlight organization, is this a priority area that we could learn anything extra from them for best practices?
Absolutely, absolutely. It would be something we'd look at after the first three initial best practice guidelines are completed, but we certainly collaborate with other homes in Eastern Ontario, so an EOWC working group with the other administrators, so we share information monthly to support each other. So that's ongoing.
Councillor Smith. Oh, I'm sorry. She's eating. So this report is for information purposes only. There's no motion required. No other questions, comments?
So we just have a motion here to move out of Committee of Management of Fairmount Home. And that's moved by Councillor Leonard and seconded by Councillor Gowdy, that the Committee of Management of Fairmount Home adjourn and revert back to Committee of the Whole Council.
All those in favor? Passed. We now move on to recommended reports from the Chief Administrative Officer. We have a staff briefing.
I'll try to use the, okay, we are working. Perfect. So I just wanted to provide a briefing on Open Farm Days from 2024 and the proposal for 2025, and bringing it here because of the timing with the committee meeting as well. So just for awareness. So in 2024, Connecting Farming and Food in Frontenac and Kingston was a 6-week initiative from August 16th to September 30th. There was 4 partners, the County of Frontenac, South Frontenac, Tourism Kingston, and the City of Kingston. And this was the 7th year that Open Farm Days had taken place. The marketing, so just some highlights from 2024. There was marketing that was directed to the website, posters, postcards, road signs, site signs for each of the locations that hosted an event. And there was social media across partner channels, paid and organic social. The website, Open Farm Days, had 9,800 users with an average time of a minute on site. The event count is the number of physical events that were on the site that people visited. So they may have come back to it a couple of times to purchase tickets. The participating locations were both in Frontenac and Kingston. There was 20 locations that posted events or experiences across the region, with 74 experiences that were listed on the website. So 64 of the 74 were ticketed events and 10 were free drop-in events. And the tickets for the events or experiences ranged from $10 to $125. So just to break this down a little bit further, some of the 74 events or experiences had multiple dates or multiple times for the experience or event. So there might have been, multiple farm tours with a specific farm. The on-farm experiences, there was fewer on-farm experiences this past year, but there was more on the educational component at farmers markets. The 5 farmers markets across Frontenac and Kingston hosted lots of different educational events during that time frame. And there was additional farm-to-table events as well, so both in Frontenac County and in Kingston as well. So really connecting the farmers to the chefs as well was a really important part of last year. There was 3 plowing matches that were held in 2024 across Frontenac County, 2 on Wolf Island, the Wolf Island plowing match and the Canadian plowing match, and then the Frontenac plowing match was also held. And those events also bring in other events and other events within the community as well. So these were just some of the photos that were taken last year. They were supported by the Regional Tourism Organization. They looked after covering the photographer costs, and we set up different photo shoots at farms and locations. So we have some new assets for use across promotional materials, across the farms, and the different experiences that took place. So as we move into 2025, we worked through surveys, we had meetings, we had a lot of in-person conversations with farms, businesses, and community groups just to talk about what worked well, what's not working well, how do things need to adapt, and just because we need to stay in touch with everybody, because this is an event to really highlight and showcase things that they're doing in the agriculture world. So we've discussed streamlining the approach to bring it back to be one weekend instead of across 6 weeks, so we can really focus on having a festival feel of a weekend. All the marketing will still continue to the website. We'll add all the farms across Frontenac County that want to be included and in Kingston to the location section on the website. So continuing to try to encourage people to be able to go to a location to find more information about the farms throughout the year. Streamlining core goals. So there's a lot of core goals for open farms, as you can see in the report, but really streamlining that to refine that, to really dig into to have some specifics there. The other one we've talked about was having an advisor from the farm, the market, and the culinary communities. Currently, when we have a decision to be made, we put the call out to everybody that's within our email list, and we call a meeting, and we'll have a few things on the agenda. But having an advisor from each of those communities that we can reach out to will just streamline that process, and it will be a lot more efficient for everybody. So both from staff perspective, but also from the community's perspective. So as we look at the event, we've talked about a weekend event that would start on Friday and run through Sunday, have a launch event at the farmers market similar to what we've had previously, and then having through the weekend a signature on-farm event that would be at one farm where there's various things happening. As far as ticketing goes, we would need to sort out the details through the weekend once we've determined moving forward with this. The farmers markets, again, would continue to be a highlight through the weekend and highlighting the educational components to those things. Plowing matches, also continuing to offer the events and experiences throughout the farms, really highlighting that supporting local, the agritourism side of things within our businesses and communities. And then also encouraging Frontenac and Kingston restaurants, businesses to offer farm-to-table menu options throughout the weekend. We encourage that ongoing, but really highlighting those throughout the weekend to make that connection. So those are some of the highlights through the recommendation for 2024 and highlights from 2025, but really trying to consolidate efforts and maximize the impact in our community. So those were just some highlights, and I just wanted to share that with you.
Thank you. Any comments, questions for Ms. Miller on her report? Sorry. Councillor Greenwood-Spears.
Thank you. When I saw the part, all marketing to the website, does that mean that we aren't going to have the large signs up that have been part and parcel?
No, the signs would definitely still be included. They're definitely impactful. They direct to the website so people can go to the website to find more information.
Okay, because I know on the Frontenac Islands that we get a lot of people that are from Europe and every place else, and they land there and they say, which farms? So I'm thinking back many years ago, back in Centennial times, and that we had signs out at the farm gate saying, Centennial Farm. Is there something like that for open farms potentially in the future? Thank
We
you.
did have site signs, we did have site signs for each of the locations that were hosting an open farms event. And it's a chloroplast sign that they choose where they put it at their site, but definitely still encouraging those as well. Is that?
Yeah, it helps in that. I'm just thinking, for example, on Wolf or on Howe and that there'd be a list on 95 highway, you go this way.
Oh, I see a more specific
more
list. Thank you.
specific for
Okay.
for the people, because you're trying to give them directions and that, and you don't have a whole list yourself.
Thank you for that.
Other comments, questions for Ms. Miller? Debbie, thank you for your report.
So there is a recommendation for that report, and it's moved by Councillor Greenwood Spears, seconded by Warden Lichty. Be it resolved that the Council of the County of Frontenac receive the Planning and Economic Development Open Farm Days Follow-up 2024 and Open Farms 2025 report, and further that the county proceed with the direction and actions related to open farms outlined in Report 2025-016.
Any comments, questions on the recommendation? Seeing none, all those in favor? Passed. Next item is number C, 2025-017 KP Trail. Joint application to the Active Transportation Fund with the Township of North Frontenac.
So that is moved by Councillor Smith, seconded by Councillor Gowdy. Be it resolved that the county council receive the report, and further that county council endorses the proposed joint application to the Federal Active Transportation Fund for the construction of the multi-use pathway in Snow Road Station, and further that staff be authorized to collaborate with relevant municipal and community partners to prepare and submit the application prior to the February 26th deadline, and further that the warden and clerk be authorized to enter into an agreement with the Government of Canada should the joint application to the Active Transportation Fund be successful.
Comments, questions? Councillor Greenwood Spears.
Hi, regarding the Appendix A of this for the trail orientation and land acquisition policy, it caught my attention on page 2 of that regarding the expense of any EA being included. I wonder if we hadn't, am I too far ahead on the Appendix A for the trail orientation?
Sorry, Councillor, it is, we are on item number C, 2025-017.
Oh, I'm on the KP Trail land acquisition, so sorry about that.
Okay, so I'll ask again, are there any questions on that recommendation? Councillor Smith.
I just have one question on the financials. Frontenac County, 75,000 Canada Community Building Fund. That's something we're applying for, or that's funds that we already have?
Mr. Farrell? Oh,
Through you, Deputy Warden, that's a part of our funds that we've set aside for trail construction. That's a reserve that was formed of gas tax, which we now refer to as the Canada Community Building Fund because we don't want to refer to it as gas anymore.
Or reserves?
Yes, but so it's set aside from that location. Yeah.
Councillor Fowler?
Yes, it says that this is part of a multi-use pathway in Snow Road Station. Is that going beyond north of the Mississippi River?
So the proposed project, if you take a look at the map in the report there, it would lead from north of the Mississippi River along the east side of Road 509 up to the community center in Snow Road Station. So it would create a multi-use path that connects the community to the trail, but also connects the trail and community to the waterfront on the river. So it benefits both the trail and the community, and that's why it's a joint project.
Any other questions regarding the recommendation? Seeing none, all those in favor? Passed. Next item, item 2025-019 KP Trail Land Acquisition Policy for Trail-Oriented Development.
So that is moved by Councillor Fowler, seconded by Councillor Leonard. Be it resolved that the report be received, and further that the land acquisition policy for trail-oriented development attached as Appendix A to this report be incorporated into the Frontenac KP Trail Management Plan, and further that any outstanding offers to donate land for trail-oriented development be presented to County Council for review, and further that a corporate-wide policy for land acquisition be developed and presented to the Governance Committee for review by the end of 2025.
Questions, comments on that report? Sorry, Councillor Greenwood Spears?
Okay, That's where I noticed on page 2 near the bottom that at point 3, talking about the environmental EA assessment to identify potential contamination, that it seems like the appendix A in that sort of releases the group from any responsibility. I'm just wondering on the expense that's going to be associated with that, as well as on the back side of it when it talked about donations, and there's going to be some sort of tax break. Are we able to issue tax receipts, or are we giving them straight tax break money, or how does that work for us?
Mr. Farrell?
So I'm looking at the treasurer as well, but again, this report is coming because we have folks that are looking to donate land. That's what's triggered this. So we're working through the details. So I don't know if Richard, I'm looking at Richard and Alex if they have anything to add, but yeah, we're kind of charting new territory here.
Yeah, from a tax break perspective, that would essentially qualify, so municipalities, you can't donate to them. So that would then trigger a tax rate on the personal side, wouldn't be on the property side. But we could give a letter in a deemed disposition, which is, or would be based on fair market value, that you can give a letter saying you receive a donation for XX amount. But there's nothing that the municipality would be giving itself as a tax break. On the personal side of things.
Yes.
So, Counselor, that answers your question?
So for example, in this report, part of what prompted this process is we had an unsolicited offer to bequeath some land to us in someone's will. We don't have a policy or a process around that, so we wanted to establish that prior to bringing something towards council to consider. So expect something soon if we go ahead with this policy. Yes, will we be able to provide them with a letter indicating the value of the contribution to the county, which would provide that individual with the tax benefits, or his estate with that tax benefits.
Right. So that sort of goes back to my other point regarding the environmental assessment. I wouldn't want to have something bequeathed to us that was a brownfield site.
Correct. And so we are under no obligation, and we have in the policy language that we are in no obligation to accept any donations or anything, and that's why we have the process of environmental financial review, because we don't want to take on something where the cleanup is going to cost us more than the benefits that we receive from it.
Sir, I believe Mr. Farrell has a question or comment?
I was just going to add, and ultimately, these would all come before council. We're just trying to establish that framework so that we have something to go off of. Again, this is a new, we've never been bequeathed land before, so we're trying to establish that policy so we have something, a framework, so that when we do bring it to council, there's something to go off of.
Warren Litkey?
So it's my experience, whoever owns the property owns whatever problems come below it or come along with it. So the question, I don't think was quite answered, and I think Councilor Greenwood-Spears had a good point. Who pays for the ESA? You have to do some preliminary, at least a stage one, to know that it's green land or brown land or brownfield land or whatever.
Right. So we in our introductory review of the property, we would try to identify if there was a need for an ESA by looking through our planning framework, and then if we need to conduct an ESA, we would advise council that we would be looking at doing this and whose expense it would be, depending on the size of the property and the value of the property. There might be a shared interest or a split. So we didn't define that because we would think it'll come up on a property by property basis.
Other questions, comments on the recommendation? Seeing none, all those in favor? Passed. Thank you. Next item E, 2025-021, Corporate Services, correction to property title of former county lands in the former Pittsburgh Township, now City of Kingston.
So that is moved by Councillor Gaudy and seconded by Councillor Greenwood Spears. Be it resolved that in accordance with bylaw number 17-1995, the Council of the County of Frontenac pass a bylaw to declare lands identified in the deed dated October 28, 1944, between Norman Wesley Morrison and Isabel Florence Morrison and the County of Frontenac surplus for the purpose of correcting a property title error of the former county road in the former Pittsburgh Township, now forming part of the city of Kingston. And there's a specific, detailed pin there for it. If you want, did you want me to read that, or it's there on the agenda? It's quite a long one. It's all singular, that certain parcel or tract of land and premises situate, lying, and being in the township of Pittsburgh in the county of Frontenac, and being part of Lot 21 in the fourth concession of the said township, commencing at the northwest angle of Lot 21, thence southerly along the limits between lots 21 and 29 feet, thence easterly along the line of a newly constructed fence, which is distant 30, obviously a typo, 33 feet from the center line of the traveled road, a distance of 40 rods, thence north 9 feet, thence westerly along the line of the old fence, which is indistinguishable. The southerly limit of the said road, 40 rods, indistinguishable to the point of commencement. And of course, this is the land legal description that was in the deed. And further, that Section 3A of Bylaw 1795, which requires notice to the public, be waived, and that the bylaw receive all three readings. And further, that the warden and clerk be authorized to execute a quitclaim deed and/or any other documentation reasonably requested or recommended by the county solicitor in favor of the city of Kingston for the subject lands.
Madam Clerk, thank you for reading all that. I appreciate it. So are there any questions or comments on the recommendation? Seeing none, all those in favor? Passed. Next item, Corporate Services 2025-022, transfer of deeded lands to the County of Frontenac in the former Portland Township to the Township of South Frontenac.
So be it resolved again that in accordance with bylaw 17-1995, the Council of the County of Frontenac pass a bylaw to declare lands legally described as part of Lot 10, Concession 8, Geographic Township of Portland, being parts 3, 4, and 5 on the draft reference plan 121177647.1, surplus in favor of the Township of South Frontenac, and further that Section 3A of bylaw 1795 requiring notice to the public be waived and that the bylaw receive all three readings, and further that the warden and clerk be authorized to execute any documentation confirming that the County of Frontenac has no interest in lands legally described as parts 3, 4, and 5 on the draft reference plan 121177647.1, reasonably requested or recommended by the county solicitor.
Comments, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Passed. Sorry, next item, 2025-024, Planning and Economic Development. Authorization to permit the CEO to sign a landowner acknowledgement and release form for the purpose of exploring the feasibility of rehabilitating a former aggregate pit located at a county-owned property through the Management of Abandoned Aggregates Properties Program.
That's moved by Councillor Leonard and seconded by Councillor Fowler that the report be received, and further that the Council of the County of Frontenac authorize the CAO to sign the land acknowledgement and release form to enter into a non-binding agreement with the Ontario Aggregate Resources Corporation to explore rehabilitation options for the former aggregate pit located at 15405 Road 509, Township of North Frontenac.
Comments, questions? Sorry, Councillor Fowler.
This is just wondering if the neighboring landowners would be notified of this event.
Mr. Farrell?
Yeah, so We received a letter from this group, the Management of Abandoned Aggregate Properties Program. I believe, and I'm going to have Dimitri clarify this, but I believe the neighboring properties would have also received something similar, but I'll let you speak to that, Dimitri.
Yeah, that's correct. So the the neighboring landowners would be notified by the same organization that notified the county.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Sorry, Mr. Farrell?
And just to clarify, so all we're seeking at this point is to engage with this group, attend the site visit, to discuss and determine what the options are, what could be done, and then potentially bring that back to council as well.
Other comments, questions? Councilor Greenwood Spears?
Okay, thank you. When I was reading through there, what caught my attention was 0.6 and 0.7, but for 0.6, it doesn't identify a timeline for any of this, and there certainly isn't any great commitment on Torac's obligation to move forward on that. But in 0.7 and that in C, it talks about being involved in using or moving on-site materials, including fill, makes no representation as to the quality of such fill, and assumes no liability for past, present, or future claims. I just worry that we're sort of handing it over if we go along with what they've proposed, and that if they moved in something that was contaminated or anything else, and that because it says they have no responsibility, we get all the responsibility, and we're not allowed on site while this is going on. So I don't want to become a dumping site.
Mr. Farrell?
Yeah, and I appreciate that comment. I think we'll take that into consideration. And again, at this point, we're just looking to meet with this group on site and discuss what the options are, and then bring that back to council. But that's a great point for consideration.
Councilor Fowler?
So this property is going to remain in the county ownership?
Mr. Farrell?
Yeah, so this is a county-owned property. It's actually at the location of our Robertsville base, our paramedic base, but it also happens to be adjacent to the trail. There's parts of it that is a former quarry, I guess, and they're just looking to remediate some of that.
Yeah, that's what caught my attention. It was close to the KMP trail. It might be something we can use in the future.
Councilor Smith?
Just a comment, if in fact it is a good pit that's determined down the road, we can always use stuff from pits for roads in North and Central, since it's very close to both. So it may be a gain for all of us if it's a usable pit.
Sorry, Mr. Farrell, did you want to comment on that, or you? Okay, Warden Lidkey?
If it's a licensed pit, there are licensed pits right there. And most of the ones across the road are sand pits. So this is probably just a played out sand pit, and sometimes the slopes are unstable. So they can move the existing material around and flatten it off and add some topsoil, throw some grass seed down, and away you go. And the coyotes have a field day, so to speak.
Dimitri, did you have any further comments?
I believe this program would only be contacting us or a landowner once the supply of that pit has been depleted, or if that pit has been abandoned. So I'm working under the assumption that the supply in this pit has been depleted, and that's why it's up for rehabilitation under this program.
I see a lot of heads nodding, so that's an agreement. Councilor Greenwood Spears?
Yeah, actually, what's crossing my mind is that potentially it could become an area that could be donated towards the housing piece, because there's a pit just along the Rideau and that right now that's being developed big time for housing. And just thinking if they're rehabilitating that we should keep an eye to that in the future, especially since it's near the KMP trail.
We'll explore options once we do a site visit to see if what type of rehabilitation is feasible, and if this is the type of project that the organization wants to tackle, not the county, but the management of abandoned aggregate properties organization.
Or, this has been a long meeting already. Warren Licky.
And you didn't have the whole meeting. I just have one comment, and Councilor Fowler, you can back me up on this. Some of the pits in that area were used recently by the military for setting off explosives and so on. So you just have to be careful when you get in there what the previous use actually was. They've seemed to have, since COVID, they don't seem to be back there, but before that, they certainly were. And you wonder what the bangs were and the explosions and so on. That's what it was.
Thank you for that. Any other comments or questions? There's a recommendation in there, Dimitri. So all those in favor of the report? Passed. Thank you very much. Next report is item 2025-24, Planning and Economic Development. Authorization to permit the CO to sign a landowner acknowledgement and release form for the purpose of exploring the feasibility of rehabilitating a former. We've done that one. Just want to make sure everybody's paying attention. Unfortunately, exactly. We now move on to information reports from the Chief Administrative Officer, 2025-015 Corporate Services, 2024 Annual Report on Delegated Authority. We have these are
just for information if anybody has questions.
so these are information items only. Any questions or comments? Councilor Greenwood Spears.
Just a quick comment on page 2, delegation of authority to finalize final approval plans of subdivision and plans of condominiums. That is for the Director of Planning and Economic Development. But then it also speaks to the role of council in that, in the final improvement later on. So just seemed like council usually signs off on the final improvement. Or is that just the final signature? I'm just asking.
No, so through you, Deputy Warden. So council approves draft plan of approval. Final approval is simply when all conditions have been met. So there's really no opportunity to change anything. Once they meet the conditions, they automatically get final approval. So it's delegated to the Director of Planning and Economic Development. The one I believe that the Governance Review Committee is looking at is extension of draft plan. I'm so sorry, Joe. I didn't see you sitting there. I'll turn it over to Joe.
Joe, did you want to comment?
Through you, Deputy Warden, no, the clerk is correct. The final approval, just for clarification, it really is an academic exercise. The draft approval is what you're concerned about. Are we meeting all the planning rules? Are there all those studies going to be done appropriately and so on? And then the obligation is on the developer to fulfill those conditions, and they have to provide us the evidence. So it's the draft approval. That's why council, I can't remember the year, Jeanette, but it's been about 5 years since council delegated the approval authority. Otherwise, it can delay up to 2 months final approval between council meetings.
Thank you for the clarification, Mr. Gallivan. Any other questions or comments? Then that report is received as information. Item number B, 2025-023, Emergency and Transportation Services Information Report on Offload Delays. Comments, questions? Seeing none, that report is received for information. We now move on to reports from the Advisory Committee of County Council. Report of the Frontenac Accessibility Advisory Committee.
So that is moved by Councillor Leonard and seconded by Councillor Gowdy that the report received from the Frontenac Accessibility Advisory Committee be received and adopted, and that is just the annual accessibility status report.
Comments, questions on the report? Seeing none, thank you. We don't vote on that one. Sorry, we do need a vote on that. Thank you. All those in favor? Passed.
So we're now on to return to council, and that is moved by Councillor Greenwood Spears and seconded by Warden Lichty that council revert from committee of the whole council to council.
All those in favor? I'll second that. Thank you.
I'm not so sure the bar is that high. Okay, back to council. Adoption of the report of the Committee of the Whole Council.
So moved by Councillor Smith, seconded by Deputy Warden Saunders, that the report of the Committee of the Whole Council be adopted and that the necessary actions or bylaws be enacted.
Any final comments? In favor? Carried. Notices, motions, notice of which has been given.
So the first one there is support for the establishment of the Ontario Rural Road Safety Program, and that is moved by Councillor Greenwood Spears and seconded by Councillor Gowdy. And through you, Warden Lichty, I'll just read the resolve clause. Now therefore be it resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the County of Frontenac requests that the Government of Ontario take action to implement the Rural Road Safety Program that Good Roads has committed to lead. It will allow Ontario's rural municipalities to make the critical investments needed to reduce the high number of people being killed and seriously injured on the Ontario rural roads. And further, that a copy of this resolution be forwarded to the Honourable Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario, the Honourable Prabmeet Sarkaria, Minister of Transportation, and all those pieces, yes. And further, that the resolution be circulated to all municipalities in Ontario requesting their support.
Any comments on this? Councillor Smith?
Well, I have a little problem in that we don't have any roads in the county. I think this motion needs to be done at our local municipalities with the guidance of our roads managers. I'm not sure what all is in the safety program that's being recommended, but I think we should get some advice from them as to what's in there that is reasonable for our situation. So I personally won't support this one.
Anyone else? Councillor Greenwood Spears.
Okay. This is something that came out of our AMO alert, and there's been actually quite a few municipalities that are supportive of it. And when we have 55% of the fatalities on 17% of the roads that are in the rural area, and that it just is a step up for leadership, that there needs to be an improvement. And Good Roads has looked at the rural roads and that has recommendations and that, and if we can get it supported, then there may be funding that flows through to it. So I think it's a benefit for all the counties or all the municipalities within our county, and this would be a leadership role for the upper tier to say, yes, it's a good idea, and we may end up with funding out of it.
Anyone else? Councillor Fowler?
I think it's a good idea, but speaking of Councillor Smith's comment, do we actually own these roads? Or are we allowed to make this request? Yeah, that's what I mean. We don't have county road. Are we allowed to make this request?
It's just for the support of the Ontario Rural Roads Safety Program. So it's a leadership type thing.
Councillor Saunders?
Thank you, Warden. So if I understand Councillor Smith properly, you're recommending this go to the first tier municipalities as opposed to being dealt with at this level? Thank you.
So I'd like to say something. I went to the Good Roads website. First of all, I have the very same thought process on this as Councillor Smith does. But I went to the Good Roads website to say, what is this? And maybe I didn't spend enough time there, but I couldn't find very much. It talked about guardrails and signs and guide rails. And North Frontenac has a current program taking guide rails out and putting guardrails in. And it talks about leveraging provincial funds. That usually means it's cost sharing. And, you know, kind of be careful what you ask for. I don't know what's in this yet for me to vote in favor of it. That's my issue. And I do think, given that we have no or limited credibility as a county because we have no infrastructure assets of this type, that it should be at the lower tier. That's what I think. Councillor Smith.
I actually will move to defer this until it's dealt with at the local level. And if they want to bring it back to us to support what they want to choose to do, then I would suggest we defer it now and take a look at what's happening locally and then support it if we need to down the road.
Councillor Leonard.
Well, I agree with that statement because the people that hasn't got county road systems in their jurisdictions, they really don't know what they're gonna vote for, what they're not. So I totally agree with that. I think the lower tiers should have a say in this and then come back to council. Thank you.
So you'll second my deferral?
Yeah, okay, I will.
I see I run a really good meeting. How will that process work?
Sorry, so I would simply just write a letter to all of the lower tiers saying, please be advised that the Council of the County of Frontenac at its meeting held this date passed the following resolution. And then once we hear back, it would be up to the lower tiers whether or not they opt to pick it up and put it on their agenda. I'm sorry?
Or deferred this resolution?
So I would write to the lower tiers that the following resolution, being this one, was deferred pending until it's been dealt with at the lower tiers. It would be totally up to them whether or not they pick it up or not.
So this may never come back, or it may come back. Okay. I noticed in the communications section that you distribute every week, there are some municipalities that do support it, but the majority of them would have roads and so on, and bridges and whatever, so, okay. Okay, we have, the resolution is being deferred on the floor. All those in favor? Carried, it's deferred. Motion to oppose provincial legislation on cycling lanes.
So that is moved by Councillor Greenwood Spears, seconded by Councillor Gowdy, and the 1, 2, 3, 4th whereas clause we've just slightly amended to County of Frontenac as opposed to Town of Aylmer. And through your permission, I'll just read the resolve clause. Now therefore be it resolved that number 1, the County of Frontenac strongly opposes the proposed provincial legislation governing bicycle lanes and affirms its support of maintaining municipal jurisdiction over cycling infrastructure decisions. Number 2, that the County of Frontenac endorses AMO's position that municipalities are better positioned than the Ministry of Transportation to make decisions about local transportation matters. Number 3, that the County of Frontenac calls on the Government of Ontario to withdraw the proposed legislation. Number 4, that the County of Frontenac reaffirms its commitment to its transportation plan and the continued development of safe, environmentally friendly, efficient cycling infrastructure for the benefit of all residents. Number 5, that the clerk be directed to forward a copy of the resolution to those listed in the clause. And number 6, that the County of Frontenac calls upon all municipalities across Ontario to adopt similar resolutions in defense of local decision-making authority and sustainable, efficient, environmentally friendly transportation planning.
Comments? Councillor Smith.
I hate to say this again, but we don't have roads that we're concerned about cycling lanes. If each of the municipalities have issues, we don't have cycling lanes in our municipality. South may, the islands may. Do you have them in the north?
No.
So again, I believe that this should come from the local municipalities up to us to support. Until we have a road system, then we should get into road issues. So again, I would suggest we defer this back to the local lower tiers. If they want to support it and ask for us to support them, then that's what I think we should do.
Councillor Leonard.
Once again, I do agree with you. That's twice today. We don't have bicycle lanes. What we call them is paved shoulders, and I'm just a little bit scared that if we turn things into bicycle lanes, that we are opening up a big book. And we have our most famous trail, KP Trail, that the bicyclers are really enjoying. And I think that's the place it should be. I don't think we should be moving ahead with bicycle lanes. So I would second that motion. Thank you.
Comments, agreements, Councilor Agreement Spears?
Question for our CAO and that, do we have an active transportation plan that's been in place here at the Frontenac County?
Yes, we do. And I'm looking at Richard and he's nodding as well. So
Could you elaborate on our position that we have regarding bicycle lanes, if we have one?
Richard, do you tell them to go to the trail or to the highway?
The active transportation plan was adopted in 2019 by County Council. It has it identifies our trail network as like a core network for moving bicycles and pedestrians through our region, but it does also identify the need for connections from the trail network into towns, villages, and so forth. Those safe connections could be with sidewalks or paved shoulders or cycling lanes, but the framework isn't prescriptive as to which type of infrastructure, just that those types of infrastructure and consideration should go into infrastructure planning at the township level.
Any other comments?
So again, I would move to defer this to the lower tier.
And Councilor Leonard has seconded that. Okay, so we vote on deferring the resolution as presented. You have to read anything?
It's basically just that the motion be deferred until dealt with by the lower tiers.
All in favor? Carried. Does anyone wish to give notice of motion? Seeing none, communication section. Does anyone wish to bring any of these to the table? Councilor Saunders, sorry.
Thank you, Warden. I wanted to pull out, I guess it's Q Food Policy Council newsletter.
You're good to go.
I only want to pull out to point out that this is a volunteer group that has struggled for many years, and thank goodness for the support this county has given that group. It kept it alive. We're now in a position of having some additional funding through the university, and it's being picked up by the City of Kingston and some others. So some very, I guess you call it, seed work that was done is now starting to pay fruit. So thank you for council's support on that.
Thank you, Councilor. Anybody else? Other business? We don't have any. And then bylaws.
Moved by Councillor Fowler and seconded by Councillor Leonard, resolved that leave be given to the mover to introduce bylaws A through E that have been circulated to all members of County Council, and that bylaws A through E be read a first and second time.
Any comments? In favor? Carried. Third reading?
Moved by Councillor Fowler, seconded by Councillor Leonard, resolved that bylaws A through E be read a third time, signed, sealed, and finally passed.
Final comments? In favor? Carried. That brings us to the adjournment.
Moved by Deputy Warden Saunders, seconded by Councillor Gowdy, that the meeting hereby adjourn at 10:47 a.m.
Any comments or objections? In favor of adjourning? Carried.